Hey guys, welcome to On My Shelf. Today I'm talking about two middle grade reads that felt a bit old, but in entirely different ways. Wolf Hollow by Lauren Walk follows the story of Annabelle, who lives on a farm. Unlike many of her classmates, Annabelle's family has done well after World War I. She has enough to eat, enough time to play, enough love to go around. And then in walks a new girl, Betty, who begins targeting Annabelle with her bullying pranks, some of which are quite dangerous. Betty quickly turns her bullying efforts to Toby, a World War I veteran who lives in the small shack in the woods. He's the kind of guy most people tolerate but don't quite understand. Annabelle, however, loves him as a child would love an uncle. Which is good because she will have to find the courage to stand up for him and risk everything to clear his name when Betty mysteriously disappears. Not only was Wolf Hollow a bit long for a middle grade read, but it was also written in a way that, to me, felt almost like reading an adult memoir. Bullying is a deep topic. We absolutely need to talk about it with our kids. They need to read about it in stories. But there was something about the way the topic was presented in this book that felt a little bit mature to me. It was a great read, but I think it could have been classified better if someone had taken the time to unravel all the layers. It felt more like an adult book to me. Just because the narrator is a 12-year-old girl doesn't mean that it should be classified middle grade fiction. I'm all for dark middle grade literature that explores hard topics like abuse and bullying and parental divorce and growing up, but Wolf Hollow felt a little too old for me. I think it had something to do with how the narrator saw the world. It seemed as though she was an adult looking back on this one particular time happening in her life. So now that I've gotten that detail out of the way, I'll say that I really did enjoy the story. Not only did it showcase bullying, but it detailed what veterans struggle with once they are done with a war. It was intriguing and heart-wrenching and, at times, sobering. The story pulled you in and would not let you go. Annabelle had an extraordinary bravery and dedication. She defied her parents to do what was right, what would protect someone she loved in the safest way. The tension throughout the book kept me engaged and hopeful. Now that I look back on it, I can tell by the first line that the book was a bit old for middle grade, even the upper ages. Here's the line. The year I turned 12, I learned how to lie. I don't mean the small fibs that children tell. I mean real lies fed by real fears, things I said and did that took me out of the life I'd always known and put me down hard into a new one. So if you read Wolf Hollow, just keep this misclassification in mind. I think you'll enjoy it much better. The Black Pearl by Scott Odell is another middle grade book that feels old, but in a completely different way. I read this one aloud to my boys, and they were riveted the whole time. It felt old because Odell was a popular writer back in the 80s and 90s, and literature was much different then than it is now. It's refreshing to read his books again. I read them all when I was younger, breezed through the whole shelf of my middle school library because I loved his story so much. He's written all sorts of Newbery Honor books, including Island of the Blue Dolphins, which was the first Odell book I ever read, Sing Down the Moon, and this one. The Black Pearl is about a pearl merchant family. Ramon Salazar has never been allowed to dive for pearls, though his father is a pearl dealer. His father believes it's too dangerous. So when his father embarks on a journey, Ramon defies his father's wishes and dives in a small area that is known to house a great sea beast, the Manta Diablo. He guards the Pearl of Heaven. But Ramon comes back with the Pearl of Heaven, and he thinks it's the saving grace of his community, until the old man whose lagoon houses El Diablo tells him that the Manta will get his pearl back one way or another. Like I said, this story is written very differently than the stories that you see today. It's not as fast-paced and visual, but it still is a story that stands the test of time. My boys could not wait to hear what happened next, which proves to me that all you really need is an engaging character and a good story. A book can have the best visual writing around, but if it does not have a story, it will fall flat. A book always begins and ends with a relatable character and a solid story. I hope you enjoyed these book recommendations. Be sure to visit racheltolson.com to see some of my best book recommendations and to get a free book from my own starter library. If you have any books you recently read that you think I'd enjoy, leave them in the comments and I'll add them to my list. For more On My Shelf, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.